The essence of thought, when untethered from its terrestrial moorings, must encounter the feral dynamism of what I term Aetherial Metacultivation, the cultivation of that which is irreducibly antecedent to cultivation itself. Here we enter a realm where ontology bleeds into a paradoxical anti-continuum, wherein the act of being is both the precondition and the dissolution of its own archetypal necessity. Let us disabuse ourselves of the simplistic presumption that being emerges ex nihilo or is tethered to an immutable ground. No being emerges as the oscillatory interplay of paracausal folds, realities that invert themselves perpetually without resolving into stasis or linear development. The paracausal fold, an invention of necessity in this discourse, defies the logics of causation and effectuation. It is not a form nor a void, but a plasmatic subversion, a structureless structure that breathes into existence the unmanifest manifold. If one is tempted to equate it with the dialectical unfolding of oppositions, let them reconsider, for it is neither thesis nor antithesis, but the simultaneous liquefaction and solidification of their interstitial potentialities. In explicating this phenomenon, one must articulate the primordial pleroma, a hyper-concept that refuses all static assignation, yet emanates the chaotic plenitude of preformal existence. The pleroma is not whole in the vulgar sense of completeness, but in its eruption of inexhaustible multiplicity. It is neither anterior to existence nor posterior. It is the para-existence, an ever-receding horizon where being perpetually outruns its own coherence. Ontogenesis within this framework does not describe the emergence of entities from non-entities. Instead, it is a recursive fragmentation, wherein each fragment generates within itself the capacity to exceed fragmentation. The act of generation here is not productive, but transductive, invoking the continual transgression of boundaries that were never established, but always presumed. Our epistemologies, those fragile scaffolds erected to interpret the sensible and the intelligible, are obliterated upon contact with the paracausal fold. What knowledge can there be of that which refuses the coherence of knowledge itself? To confront this problem, we must conceive of resonant collapse, a mode of cognition that vibrates at the threshold of intelligibility and unintelligibility. In resonant collapse, one perceives not through distinction, but through the coalescence of indistinction, the symphony of disarray that becomes its own order by virtue of refusing order. The collapse is not nihilistic. It is generative in its obliteration, a phoenix of antiform arising not from ashes, but from the very refusal of combustion. Here, the familiar dichotomies of knowledge and ignorance, presence and absence, collapse into the quagmire of their own inadequacy, producing a kind of metacognitive vertigo, wherein the observer becomes an oblation to the observed. Central to the doctrine of Aetherial Metacultivation is the role of aesthetic perception, which transcends the pedestrian realms of beauty and sublimity. It becomes a form of metaphysical agitation, a trembling in the fabric of perception that induces not clarity, but a radical bewilderment, a convulsion of the self against the insoluble complexity of the paracausal. This agitation does not placate, it devours. It consumes the very faculties through which it is apprehended, leaving in its wake not enlightenment, but an irradiated void of hyper-awareness. Such perception cannot be cultivated through ordinary praxis. It demands a rupture, a catastrophic implosion of preconditioned modalities of thought. To perceive aesthetically in this framework is to be annihilated, to dissolve into the very process of perception until no subject remains to bear witness. From these convolutions arises an ethical imperative that is both impossible and inexorable. The infinite recoil of the paracausal fold, its refusal to settle, its perpetual self-negation, demands from us a mode of existence that mirrors its fluidity. This is not an ethics of action or even of being, but an ethics of oscillation, where the moral agent becomes a locus of ceaseless becoming. To act ethically in this schema is to abandon the illusion of resolution, to embrace the infinite regress of moral ambiguity as the only authentic response to the irreducibility of existence. Yet this ethical imperative offers no solace. It annihilates the comfort of moral certainty, replacing it with a vertiginous expanse of unrelenting dynamism. It is an ethics of despair that transfigures despair into its own transcendence.